Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new to my channel, hi, my name is Shay. I don't know what brought you here, but I'm really glad to have you here. I'd love for this YouTube channel to keep growing because I am still so small. But I'm sorry if I sound a little bit congested today. I am getting a little bit sick. No, I don't think it's coronavirus with all this crazy stuff going on. I wanted to sit down and make this video today because even though I only have less than 300 subscribers, I feel like I owe it to you guys, and I think it'd be a really good coping way for me to deal with everything. I'm sure by the title, you know what this video is going to be. I'm kind of just going to explain why I disappeared from YouTube for so long and kind of open up about some things that have been going on in my life, because I did go through quite a bit this past year, and I, like almost everyone else, just always think it's easier to only show the good parts of my life on social media and always come on here and be a smiling face and try and always be a positive person. But in reality, that's not my everyday life. Things do get really hard for me, but I just choose to go through it instead of show it. That's never been who I am, and that's a big part of why I took such a break from YouTube, is for a while I couldn't put on that face and just act like everything was okay. I wasn't comfortable with it. I would rather just not show you guys than lie to anyone and make it seem like my life was perfect for an entire year straight through a lot of chaos that was going on. The fact of putting on a mask and acting like everything's okay, and knowing that there is younger people out there who I used to be, where I look up to those people, and you get to a point where you're almost comparing your life to theirs, and it's a constant state of why am I struggling and why aren't they struggling, and why do I go through so many things? But it seems like no social media influencer or anyone who has a platform to talk about it, until this past year, no one really talked about it. And that's okay, to each their own, but to me it's something important if I decide to want to stick through and try and be a social media influencer. That's never been my goal. I just want to meet a lot of dope people through YouTube, honestly. I grew up watching YouTube, and so it was a big part of me growing up. I watched it all the time. I still watch YouTube almost every night when I go to bed, and so I want to be that person for someone. I want to be the person that people go and watch when they're having a bad time, or even just want to be involved in my life and want to connect on that level. That's why I try so hard to reply to every comment and react, at least every comment if I don't have something to add to it. I do appreciate all you guys and everyone supporting dreams that I've wanted for so many years. One of my YouTube videos, my Domino's one, as I was going through one of the hardest periods of my life, that video has continued to blow up, and it's crazy to me. I never planned on getting more than, say, a few hundred views on a YouTube video. As corny as it is, that's what I feel a big purpose of my life is to help other people and to be there for other people. And that's what I want to build this platform to be used for. But I want this to be you guys sitting down and seeing the true me, because I don't really film sit down videos, and I can put on a mask and I can be silly. And I am so funny. I think I'm one of the funniest people that I know, but that's not all there is to me. I'm a very educated young female that I take all the good things life has to offer and I live them to the fullest extent, and I take all the bad things life has to offer and I process them how I need to, and I put them to the side if I don't need them on my day-to-day life, or I learn the lessons for them. And I think that's so big to put onto my platforms and stuff of what I'm trying to do and why I'm here. It's true, and it's important for you to know that, because for me that leads into why I took a break for, I can't even remember how long it was, the last 6 months, last 8 months of my life have been complete chaos, and there's a lot to it that I just went through the hardest breakup of my life. It's still a very difficult thing for me to talk about, but I'm ready to share as much as I'm ever going to share on social media about this, because I don't feel like I need to share a ton about this subject. I was with this guy for almost 4 years on and off. We started dating when I was 15 and he was 16 years old, and we broke up a lot. Anyone in my personal life knows that me and my ex, we broke up very often. Whatever, it was necessary. We started dating super young. There was cheating involved, there was lying, there was possessiveness, and there was toxic traits on both ends. And I'm not here to make him a bad guy or speak bad on his name. There were times where our relationship was very unhealthy on both of our parts because we started dating so young. And no, that's not an excuse. I'm not dismissing anything that was done on my part or his part. We both were in the wrong. But it's very hard to start dating someone so young and automatically get into a very serious relationship. We had so many struggles where, like, I didn't date around through high school because I was with him, and that's okay for a lot of people. That's 100% okay if you're in that situation and you meet your high school sweetheart and you guys spend the rest of your life together. That's perfect, and I'm so happy for you because you do build a really strong connection. He was my best friend for almost 4 years. We were always together. He was who I moved out with. We had an apartment together. We'd lived together with families. We ended up moving into a house with part of my family. Things were really good for a while. We did lots of things, like I said, traveling, leaving the country together. Like, I experienced a lot with him, and, like, I do think it was good, but it formed me to be who I am today. And I am so proud of who I've become, from all the bad things in that relationship, from all the good things. And like I said, I'm not trying to belittle him by any means. He still is a wonderful guy. We still talk quite often, actually. We finally hit a point where we're civilly in each other's lives, and it's a healthy relationship. He still lives with my brother. Like, he's still going to be in my life, and that's okay. I finally came to terms with that. But I guess, in a nutshell, why we broke up was a lot of what I just said. We started dating when I was 15. And in the past year of my life, since about December of 2018, I believe it was, for my entire life, I've known that I've had anxiety. As soon as I could understand it, I knew I had anxiety. I knew that I had depression. I've known that I have mental health issues. But since about December of 2018, when me and him finally got an apartment together, my mental health came crashing down, and it came around in full swing. I started having very severe panic attacks. I myself didn't even know how to let him help me. He was very willing. He wanted to do things to help me. It wasn't a him thing. It was 100% me. I had my own issues that came in where I was experiencing really bad daily anxiety for, like, the first few times in my life. Like, I've always had generalized anxiety disorder, like most people nowadays. If you don't have anxiety, do you look at the internet? Like, it came around full swing where I felt like it completely altered me as a person, and I struggled a lot with coming into my mental health issues because I felt like it changed me. And as much as I'm someone who loves change, I definitely struggle with it when it's unplanned. And this all came around, like, right after I turned 18, and I'd finally moved out of my house, and I'd left Domino's for a while. I took a break for a few months. I went to get a different, like, temporary job, and there was just so much in my life changing, and I didn't really know how to deal with it, and it caused us a lot of arguments. Like, I don't even want to say arguments, but more so, like, me being upset on my part because I was very fearful of, like, the boy I'd been in love with for 4 years. I was like, I don't feel like it's fair to you because I myself don't even, like, I don't resonate with the person you fell in love with. And that was really hard for me to deal with because I felt like I myself had altered so much as a person. And not to say that he hadn't, but so many things, like, it was hard because I was going through all these traumatic things, and I felt like I'd completely altered as a person. And within a few months, like, I'd graduated high school. Like, I had to start working more than full-time hours to, like, pay all my bills. Like, we moved out and got an apartment. Like, I was making sure, like, I was playing housewife by choice. Like, it's just naturally who I am. I'm a very nurturing person. Like, I was trying to buy groceries for our whole household. Like, I was trying to cook and clean every day when I got home on top of everything and take care of our dogs, and kind of lost sight of taking care of myself and how to feed myself as a person. And once it started, it all just kind of went downhill. We finally moved out of that apartment, but as soon as we finally got out of there and got to my brother's house, I want to say some things did get better. Like, we moved in with them, and I was so ecstatic to be living with my brother and his girlfriend. I love them. They're some of, like, the most positive people in my life, and it was a really good change for me, but I still was just struggling with things back home too. Like, we still lived really close to my family, but my dad's health was not doing very well at all. Like, he was struggling a lot this past year with stuff I won't go into, but I started with my mental health and stuff, as much as I think this is important to, like, put out there and let someone else know they're not going through it, because I felt very, like, alienated through all of it. Is I blame myself for a lot of things that I know aren't my fault, but because I sit and overthink them so much. Like, my dad's health started to get bad right after I moved out, and I continuously blamed myself for it. And it's already like the homesick feeling of when you leave home for the first time. I know it's hard for everybody, but it kind of just added insult to injury of like, I just wanted to be home with him and taking care of him as much as I was ready to be like, I'm an adult, I can do things by myself, I want to be out in my own house. It was really hard for me to be away from him, and it was one of the things that like ate away at me daily. And I finally got to transfer back around this time to my like home Domino's store, and I was so thankful because the store I was at, for some reason, with my anxiety being as bad as it was, I would wake up and be physically sick every day before I went into work because I just anticipated going there so badly. I did not get along with my management team and stuff, so a lot of stuff that was going on in this time period, truthfully, did not have anything to do with my ex. Like, the issues leading up to our breakup was not my ex's fault, and I think that's one of the hardest things for him to come to terms with, is because there was a lot of things on his fault that were done wrong in our relationship, and there was a lot of things that I was at fault for that were done wrong in our relationship. But it wasn't even necessarily our relationship that was the issue. It was me. And that's okay. But I finally got to come home back to my hometown and go back to the Domino's I started at. And that's when I filmed my second Domino sit down video, and I thought that I was finally getting better to an extent. So it was a lot of faking it for a few months until I really couldn't anymore. And I reached a really low point where anything that I used to love, or what I was passionate about, things like art and like my dog is one of my biggest passions in life. Like, I used to take her to the dog park every day. I used to just love being outside in the summer, and this was all going on around like June, July of last year when we moved. And I just all of a sudden was losing any drive to do anything. I didn't want to leave the house. I got really anxious every day when my ex would come home from work, and it wasn't him necessarily that made me anxious, but it was the more people that were in my day-to-day life that could notice something was wrong. My anxiety would spike, and I would do this much more to compensate and make everyone think that I was okay. So for me alone, like, living with so many people that genuinely loved for me and cared about me was so hard, because I've always been able to admit that I have anxiety, and I'll do something like the picking at the skin on my lips. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I have anxiety. I can address it like that, but for me to like actually open up to someone and be like, hey, like, I'm not doing okay, X, Y, and Z, like, to open up, it's never been easy for me. I've always been the person everyone opens up to. I never open up to people. I myself was not okay, and it was affecting our relationship, where I had completely fallen out of love with myself, and I didn't think at that point anyone else could love me. And it was just a difficult thing for me because, like I said, so much with like the growing and evolving, like, I have changed so much even since I graduated high school 2 years ago. I've changed so much in the past, I don't know, since September when we broke up. Like, I'm constantly looking at like, what's the next step? What's the next step? I've never been someone who's content living in the present, and I know that's one of my faults, but I felt like I kept changing and evolving, and like, it reached a point to where, along with all of my mental health issues that I'd been dealing with and my depression getting so bad, I started to like feel really guilty. Like, who he was and who I was when we fell in love with each other weren't really who we were anymore. And that was the hardest thing for me to admit to myself, of like, we both started right here 4 years ago, and we slowly have just grown and like completely branched away from each other, where like none of our interests were even the same. Our friend groups were very different dynamics, like, and that can be very okay in a relationship, but it was something that I struggled with dating him because it hadn't always been that way. And like, it sounds stupid to say out loud because there is a lot of stuff that went on in the background that like I'm not comfortable to talk about on social media, but I don't feel like any of it's a big enough part of our breakup, because for me at least, I did leave him. I should say that. I'm the one that broke up with him and I left. And that, I'll admit it. Like, I did it in one of the worst ways possible. I went about this in not a good way. My mental health was so bad that I needed answers outside of him and the comfort of what I'd been doing for the past 4 years. Because when we started dating, like, my anxiety was not as bad as it was when we broke up. And my anxiety still now is not even as bad as it was July of last year. I would spend days at home, like, crying in my bed because I couldn't get myself to get out. and I was so just unhappy with everything, and I definitely still struggle. There's still days I don't want to get out of bed. There's still things that send me into a full panic attack, but I'm growing and I'm evolving through all of it. What I wanted to do with my future and what I'd always planned for my future, yes, he was always in my future plans. I don't want it to sound like in 4 years I never planned for our futures to be together, but like even just the future I had planned for myself from being a kid, of where I wanted to live, where I wanted to go, the career that I wanted, it started to not line up with his. And it felt like almost while I was with him, the future I'd always wanted wasn't obtainable anymore, if that makes sense. And that's just when I'd known that we completely had grown apart, and it was okay that like every relationship you are in is obviously not supposed to last the rest of your life. It's really hard to put into words what I was feeling at the time. I just knew in my heart that like it was time to be done. It was a temporary thing in my life, that I'd learned all my lessons for it that I was supposed to. I'd gone through all the journeys I was supposed to go through with him. But it reached a point where, like I said, I'd completely fallen out of love with myself. And that is something that is so important to me personally, that if I don't have love for myself, I can't continue to love someone else, because I love wholeheartedly. And I'm the type of person by nature, not at fault of my ex, not at fault of anyone I've ever been with. I have a habit of putting more into everyone around me, especially romantically in friendships. I put more into everyone around me than I do to myself. I'm a very selfless person, and I felt like that's who I'd been for the 4 years on and off we were together. For 4 years, my life had revolved around him. I thought about him first in everything, and every decision was made around him or his thoughts or his concerns. And that's how a relationship should be to an extent. But you have to consider yourself in it too. And I had reached a point where I felt very out of tune with who I was. And I didn't even, like I'd said, I didn't love things I used to love. I wasn't in tune with me at all. I felt like I knew more about my ex-boyfriend than I knew about myself. Like I was living in a stranger's body in a sense, where I didn't know anything about me. I don't not love him. I don't resent him. We didn't have an ugly breakup. It was just, it reached a point where like I thought too for a while like my anxiety was based on him, and it wasn't. It's okay to feel that way and think that when you don't understand your anxiety yet, and I want to make that okay to I want to say it's okay to think that at times, but it's not true, and maybe you need to experience it for yourself. But I had a lot of feelings and guilt in that too, where I thought that he was the source of my anxiety, because when it came into my life he was around, and when he was around, it was more intense, and it wasn't his fault at all. It was anyone's presence around me made me more anxious, because I was worried of someone noticing. And for so many years, I wanted to live hiding it. I didn't want people to notice when I wasn't okay. I just wanted to always be okay. And I feel like that's a very common thing with anxiety, is no one wants to admit that they're struggling. No one wants to admit that times are hard. No one wants anyone to notice that they aren't the brave face they always put on, because I think that's one of the most common misconceptions with depression and anxiety, is it's always these sad people that are like crying all the time and hiding in a corner and whatever, like can't leave their bed. They just always seem sad. But most of the time, the people who are struggling the most are the ones with the biggest smiles and always stand out in a crowd, because they're overcompensating. They don't want anyone to know they're struggling, and that's part of the mental health issues. Like, you're anxious of anybody noticing that you're not okay. But for the longest time, I truthfully thought that he was part of the issue, and I had told him that when we broke up, and it's still one of the things that eats me alive, because I almost put my mental health on someone else without meaning to, but it was one of the things I had to explain to him. And I can wholeheartedly say today my mental health is on nobody but myself. Or it has also been me spending the past 7 months of my life figuring that out. The night that we broke up, I literally packed up a duffel bag before he got home from work. I went through and sorted all of our stuff that needed to be sorted so I could come and grab my boxes and leave afterwards. But I literally packed up a duffel bag, grabbed one of my blankets and a pillow off of our bed. I packed my whole car up, I got my dog's harness on, and as soon as he got home from work, I told him and I left. And it was not the best way for me to go about things. I should have stayed and given him more answers. I completely blindsided him by it, and that's my fault. I'll admit it. That was my bad. It was not the best way for me to go about things, but at the time, it's what I felt like I needed. I didn't want to sit and discuss things, because with the way that we are, and after 4 years of comfortably being together, I knew that I'd be talked out of it, And it was something I decided after sitting alone so much and like thinking on it. I knew it's what I needed at the time. It wasn't even a want at this point. It's what I needed. I'd been heart set on it. So me staying and talking it out with him wouldn't have done it. And we'd reached a point of like, with the amount of anger and resentment I'd had towards the situation, I knew it would have been an ugly fight that I wasn't ready for. So I kind of just broke down. I started crying my eyes out, explained everything to him, and I ran away to my best friend's house for about a week. And I just lived out of a duffel bag. I was still going to work at the time, and then I had to ask my dad if I could come back and crash here for a while. I literally just still had my old mattress in this room, crashed on my mattress on the floor here for a while until we figured out our whole living situation. He ended up staying, like I'd stated. I'm back at my dad's house. And over the past 7 months, there has been a lot of fights with us, a lot of arguments. We've almost gotten back together right around Christmas time because of the emotions of the holidays. I've talked to a few other people. I've talked on and off with this like amazing guy, but neither of us are ready to be in a relationship right now. But for the first multiple months of this breakup, what was so important to me was that I took the time to understand my mental health. I knew for myself I needed to learn how to be alone. Because until this year, I didn't know how to. I constantly wanted to be distracted by things, so I didn't think about my mental health, so that I didn't feel the things that I didn't want to feel. I would just distract myself. Being alone and just coming to peace with who I was personally, because I'd been running from it for so long. And a lot of people do that maybe without even realizing it, because it wasn't something I'd realized until I'd kind of, in a way, been pointed out to me by a friend of like, you need to be okay to be alone before you can be with someone. Because I'm a very independent person, but mentally, I can be codependent on someone's presence, if that makes sense. I don't need you around to financially support me or anything like that, but I was very dependent on having someone in my presence all the time, and that was very unhealthy for me. So I spent months of really like reconnecting with old friendships, but not spending much time with people. I spent a lot of time just at home alone through the breakup. I didn't really cry much because I finally was just at peace with like, this is what my life is now. I was putting myself into work almost too much at times because I just started working more hours and really just trying to that was the only thing. I loved working at Domino's for so long, and that was the only thing that I was sure of at that point in my life, was that I loved my job, and I loved the people I worked with, and I started doing hair on the side more because I've always loved doing hair. That's why I added some color into some of my extensions right now. They look a little crazy, but I started just rekindling with a lot of things that I used to be passionate about, but doing it on my own. Like, I was going on hikes with my dog, which I guess isn't really alone, but like I loved taking her on hikes, and I would do it without any friends because I wanted to be like, okay, I can do these things and find joy in these things while being alone. And that was a lot of what this breakup's been for me. And like, I ended up finally leaving Domino's and chasing like one of my truest passions, which is working in like a psychological field. I am now like a behavioral technician, and I have a foot in the door if I want to go back to school, which is something I always wanted to do. I wanted to get a college degree, but it didn't line up with the life I was living with my ex, and it wasn't his fault, but I became too comfortable in this place of like, okay, I can just settle down and have kids with this person and my life is like built. But it was so much settling on my part by choice because I was comfortable. And like, I think I want that to be like my biggest message through this video, is even like I said, the relationship and the situation I was in, a lot of it was very toxic at times. But even without something being toxic in like you guys fighting or physical abuse or cheating or any of that, like something can be toxic for the sense of just like, it's comfortable. It's the same as with like anxiety or anyone really. Like if you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone, there's so many experiences that you miss out on in life. And I reached a point where I wasn't content staying somewhere just because I was comfortable and it was easy with him. I'd had the most experiences like in life with him, sexually with him, like everything like that. We got cars together. Like I was with him before I drove. Like it was so easy for me to stay for years because I was comfortable. And as soon as I left that comfort zone, I personally feel like I blossomed as a person. I now know so many more things that I love because I took the time to like self-care, fall back in love with myself, like fall back in love with life. I reached a point where I didn't want to go do anything and I was sad and I was depressed, and now like I find so much joy and passion in these smallest things, like sitting in my room and painting canvases finally makes me happy again, and that's amazing to me. And I got so frustrated for a while because for the longest time everyone in my life was like, if you're so depressed, if you're so anxious, like go get on medication this. I don't know if it's like this in every state, but in Utah, like everyone's answer is to just get medicated. And I have nothing against anyone who's medicated, and I needed to come back home. I needed to fall back in love with myself and with life and figure out the root of things that made me anxious and why I was depressed. And I needed, because I'm someone, my entire life I've loved psychology, I've loved analyzing things. I needed answers. I needed to know what to avoid that made me anxious, and how to help myself alone without another person around to stop my anxiety before I was comfortable getting on meds. And this last month of my life, before this coronavirus started, I have been the best I have been, I think, in my entire life, and that is so exciting for me to say, because for once, I'm okay, but I'm not depressed, I'm not sad, I'm not suicidal, I'm not having body image issues anymore, I'm not feeling like a burden in anyone's life. Like I've completely plateaued and I'm just gonna climb up from here, and that's amazing to me. And maybe this would have happened for other people if they would have stayed in that relationship, but for me it wouldn't have. I wouldn't have put in the work. I would have been working on my relationship and him and showing him I loved him, and I needed to take that break and do that to myself. I needed to show myself that I loved myself and find all the reasons to love myself and why to love life and things I could do that make me so happy and grow, like even just with my dog. Like I had so many things to experience in life with just her without having someone else around, as stupid as that sounds. And now I'm ready to finally like consider going, because I started therapy. That's also probably important in all of this. Therapy is pretty dope. I love my therapist. She's awesome. And I'm someone who like talking helps me a lot, and that's why I want to film these YouTube videos, because it's okay to talk about it. Like, I guarantee I learned, like, so much about a lot of my friendships and my lifelong friendships of, like, so many people I know and I love and I've grown up with are going through the same thing as me, but none of us are comfortable enough to talk about it until just one of us opens up. Like, I have opened up to so many of my friends and, like, related to people and grown through that, and, like, our connections have grown because we're on the same, like, wavelength in a sense, and we're experiencing. So many people around you are experiencing the same thing, but you don't know it until you talk about it. But I'm finally to a point where, like, I'm ready to go talk to another psychiatrist and consider getting on meds just to manage it, to make sure that I stay here, and just something light, like a general anti-anxiety, so that when things get bad, they aren't as bad as they were. But I'm finally at a point where I don't feel like I would need to get on meds, and that's important. Like, I think it's so important that in this breakup, like, maybe for everyone it's not always like this, and me taking a break from social media and really a lot of, like, even, like I said, just toxic friendships, and I cut so many people out, like, maybe it doesn't always have a happy ending, and it's taken 7 months for me to reach a point where, like, it's not an ending, but I'm finally reaching a happy point and I'm okay. And I can't tell everyone that it'll be like this for every situation, because there will be bad times and bad outcomes. But it was something that I genuinely felt in my heart that I needed, and I'm so glad that I followed it, and I hate that I hurt my ex in the process, because I know he loves me more than anything. As of right now in my life, it's not what I want. Relationships are not what's important to me right now. Loving myself and building my future up for success, to be successful whether someone else is in my life or not, is very important to me. And that's where I sit right now. Now I'm okay. And that's crazy to me, and I'm so thankful for it, that I took the time and I took the patience and I learned how to be okay without anyone else in my life. Yes, there's been a lot of wonderful people who have helped me along this journey and who have been here, like, willing to lend out a hand or want to help or anything like that, but there was so many of them that I was just like, I appreciate it, but, like, I need to do this by myself. And now that I have, it was all the more reason to fall back in love with myself. I am so proud of everything I've done in this past year, and I can't wait to see where everything goes from here. But I need to wrap up this video because I have, like, over an hour of footage now, because I just ramble, and this is a topic I'm super passionate about. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and kind of just like a little glimpse into more of like my actual reality and not just putting on a mask. Or I haven't even really tried to hide things on YouTube. I just haven't opened up. Like until my last video, there was none of my personality on my channel. There was just not much of me. And I want this to be more of what my channel is, of like a safe place for everyone to come and talk to me and talk to other like viewers in the comments and relate and just connect and feel less alone, because mental health can make you feel so alone, and I promise that you're not. And all my DMs on any platform is always open. I always have all my social medias linked down below. Come to me. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to try and help you through anything that you're going through, because you're not alone, and I love every single one of you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!